Chapter 1 Gulf of Aden, November 9. At dawn the sea was moderate, with a 4-foot swell with a nice distance between the crests. The rising wind occasionally ripped spindrift from the tops. The boat rode well, topping the crests and shipping just a little water over the gunnels that collected at the bottom. Mustafa had 2 men with cans bailing as water accumulated in the boat. There wasn't much of it, so all it really did was soak clothes and weapons. There were a dozen men, so they took turns bailing. The activity helped keep them warm and alert. They had left the island of Abd al-Kuri off the coast of Somalia in the middle of the night. Above them was a high, overcast layer that hid the stars. Mustafa used a compass to hold a northerly course. It was in the hour or so before dawn that Mustafa first saw stars. The wind freshened. The handheld radio in his pocket came to life. Mustafa held it to his ear. "She is doing 13 knots at coordinates," and the voice read them off. Mustafa wrote the numbers down, then repeated them. Yes, he had them right. He typed the numbers into his GPS, a little rectangular thing not much bigger than his hand, and watched the numbers light up. Now he had a course and distance. Only 40 miles. 330 degrees. Of course, she was heading northeast, along the coast of Yemen, so he would point a little more to the east to intercept. Another voice, distinctive. "Mine is at," and he read off the coordinates. "They will pass each other in 2 hours and 10 minutes. There were 3 other boats in sight in the early light, before the sun rose. They had followed the little light on the masthead. Mustafa turned it off. The dawn revealed a clear sky and a restless, empty sea. There was a freighter to the east, but Mustafa ignored it and held his course. They were in the sea lanes that ran into and out of the Bab al-Mandeb, the asshole of the Red Sea. Only 20 miles wide, that strait handled all the traffic headed to and from the Suez Canal, 23,000 ships a year, almost 2,000 a month, an average of 63 ships a day. The narrow Gulf of Suez, the Red Sea, and the Gulf of Aden were a maritime superhighway, perhaps the busiest on the planet, and it was infested with pirates. Pirate Alley, some people called it, and for good reason. Still, ships had to go through these waters to get to the Suez Canal, or else they had to transit all the way around the continent of Africa, down around the Cape of Good Hope, a place that Mustafa had never been but had heard about. Mustafa had never actually seen a world globe, but he had been told all this and had looked at rough sketches in the dirt, and like many illiterates, he had a good memory. Mustafa al-Said was good at his job and made a fine living working at it. No other job in Somalia paid as well as being a pirate captain, except, of course, being a pirate sheik, a warlord, and having a dozen or so captains with their own boats working for you. Pirating was dangerous work, but so was fishing on the open ocean, and pirating paid so much better. Better to die at sea than to starve to death, Mustafa thought. So here they were, under a cloudless sky, on a wide, empty, restless ocean. The men were looking around in every direction, searching the horizon for a mast, a wisp of smoke, anything. The weather was far from ideal for a pirate ship. Every minute they were here increased the chances that a patrol plane would fly over to check them out, or that the mast peeking over the horizon would turn out to be a warship. Mustafa didn't know how radar worked, but he knew the warships could see through night and fog, and his chances of spending the day here at sea undiscovered were slim. Further, he knew the warships could easily outrun his skiff, which normally had a top speed of perhaps 20 knots in a calm sea. In this swell, with 10 men and weapons aboard, something less. However, for this mission the boat sported a new engine, one that pushed it at 30 knots when run flat out. The other 2 boats following him to the left and right were similarly equipped. Mustafa listened to the steady throb of the engine and smiled. German. For this victim they would need the extra speed. The men sensed their precarious position, and they were restless, even though they said nothing to Mustafa, in whom they had confidence. He had earned it. He had been to sea 15 times in the past year, and had taken 6 vessels, which had put plenty of money in the pockets of the men who sailed with him. The men knew his reputation, and vied to crew for him. 60 men had volunteered for this voyage, and he had picked his crew from among them. Some of them had sailed with him before, and he trusted them to obey orders. The others were recommended by powerful